Welcome to another episode of Brian's Deductions. Today we're going to go ahead and do the Week 11 recap for the NFL. If this is your first time watching, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to click on this video. I hope the content that is coming will intrigue you and make you want to come back for sure. And for those of you that are returning, I appreciate you for coming back and watching another video. It is well appreciated for sure. With that, I'd like to ask, before we start, just if you feel free to like, subscribe, comment on anything that you may want us to talk about, whether it's sports related, entertainment related, or anything else. Be share with everybody you know. Also, just want to announce now that we will probably have a 2-part preview for Week 12 this week. God willing. So the first part will come out Thursday morning, and then the second one should come out Friday morning or Friday afternoon, depending on situation. Maybe part 2 might be Saturday. We'll see. Depends on how things go. But definitely look out for 2-part preview for Week 12. Also, we will be having what's the play content. Just wanted to take the week off. Since, obviously Thanksgiving is around the corner, so wanted to be able to, everybody wanted to, have time to be with the family. So there will be more What's the Play episodes coming out. It's just, for now, we're taking a slight break. But with that, let's go straight into the content. So this week I decided to move away from the themes just because there were a few games that I kind of grouped together, as you'll see, but it just was a situation where there weren't any clever titles in my opinion, so I just kind of went ahead and just decided to just go by the games instead of trying to force themes this week. So first game is the most recent one is the one that just ended probably a few hours ago, the Eagles and the Chiefs. So in this game, this was you could argue it was a defensive struggle for sure. It was definitely dominated by Kansas City's defense for the majority of the game. But Philly, as they've done all season, have just found ways to win at the end. Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith had a big 41-yard completion. And then, obviously, the brotherly shove to put them up by 4. So they did a good job of running the football today and sticking with the run, which was something that I thought they would need to do in order to win this game. They did a good job of getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and they did a great job of defending the Chiefs receivers, even Travis Kelce, finding a way to keep him contained. I think it's partially. Well, I'll talk more about the defensive scheme with the Chiefs, but for the Eagles, this is a very, very impressive win. Obviously not the cleanest win, and maybe not the most impressive to some people, but in my eyes, I think it's a very big game for them to win because they were able to win ugly. They didn't play the best ball that they could have. But they still found a way to win in the end, and that's a big thing. Being 9-1 and being the class of the NFL right now, with obviously the best record in the league. And to me, I think Jalen Hurts did just enough to move ahead of Patrick Mahomes in the MVP race. Now, obviously, wins are not a QB stat. Obviously, it's a team thing, but I do think being 9-1. Does have to account for something. Obviously, the Eagles have had games where they haven't been too great this year. So obviously, there's something there that has to be corrected. Of course, if you actually want Jalen to go ahead and win the MVP and you want to continue to win games, considering the fact that your next 4 games are against Buffalo, San Fran, Dallas, and Seattle. So obviously, still have some things that they gotta clean up, but. It was good to see that they were able to find a way to win. And for now, Jalen Hurts is my MVP front runner. as they were able to, as he was able to do enough through the air and on the ground to win this game. Even though obviously the box score would probably say otherwise um, in terms of him doing enough. On the Chiefs side, Patrick Mahomes had a game that the box score had a better game than the box score will give him credit for. If you watch the game, it was a situation where kind of like we're basically like the Detroit game. He was let down by his receivers, even Travis Kelce, when it came to drops. Now I remember during the first week we had the conversation on what's the play that CT had brought up a good point about obviously how Travis Kelce opens up the field for the rest of the guys, and without him on the field, obviously it hurt them scheme wise because they didn't have obviously their number one option, and it obviously hurt guys like Kadarius Toney, who had a pretty good game today against the Eagles, both through special teams and on the offensive side. But Brett Veach has got to go find a receiver in this offseason for sure, whether it's through the draft or something else. I will give him an Avery credit for drafting Rashee Rice. He does look like a guy that's going to develop into a good receiver. But the thing that I was going to talk about with the Eagles is that I think the Eagles defense. I think the Broncos might have put. I won't say they put the playbook out on it, so to speak. Like they didn't like the blueprint. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think they put the blueprint out on how to stop Kansas City. But I think if you have a team that is able to double Travis Kelce and then just sit back and play man coverage, I think that you're pretty much able to be pretty successful against Kansas City. Now, Kansas City did do a good job on the run on the ground, obviously. So there's give and take with that. But I think if you're a team playing the Chiefs right now, even though it's very simple for me to say just as a novice watching the game, I think it's a situation where if you're able to bracket Travis Kelce and keep him contained, and you just play man coverage across the board and keep two high safeties. Honestly, you just play two man. It's just a situation where if you're able to contain the run enough, you should be able to win because the Chiefs do not have a receiver right now, even counting Rashee Rice, outside of Travis Kelce that can beat man coverage, in my opinion. And part of that may just be the fact that part of the thing that may be clouding my judgment is the fact that they did drop 5 passes today, because obviously a few of those are caught. Not only do the numbers look better, but some of the drives are sustained. Some of the game completely turns on some of them, like the drop that Marquez Valdez-Scantling had that would have made it 23-21, probably 24-21 after Harrison Butker gets the extra point, but. That's a huge momentum shift right there by dropping that one. Justin Watson drops a 4th and 25 pass, eerily similar to the drop. I think it was like the same down and distance against the Lions, if I'm not mistaken, when Sky Moore almost had a chance to catch the football. And he also dropped a 3rd and 4 slant route earlier in the game, which. Gave the Eagles a chance to get the ball back. So it was plays like that where obviously you're hurting you're hurting your momentum, obviously, and you're hurting the chances of being able to sustain drives. So you have to. I just think if you're Brett Veach, you have to find a receiver, whether it's through the draft or in free agency. If in the event that this receiver doesn't get franchise tagged or extended, you probably got to go try to find a guy like T. Higgins, who can either beat man coverage or is a guy that you could just kind of throw the ball to in one-on-one situations, and they'll just go make a play for you. So again, I think that with Rashee Rice, they'll definitely try to find ways to continue to get him the football. I think Kadarius Toney will be involved a lot more as the season goes on because he had a nice game, so to speak. But Justin Watson, MVS, Sky Moore, um, it's not gonna be able to cut. Is not gonna be able to cut it past this year. Patrick is out there working with a whole lot of basically wide receiver threes, in my opinion, and I think that you just have to find a way to upgrade that receiver core. Now I understand that'll be difficult, obviously, because you got a guy like Chris Jones that you had to pay. You got an offensive line, probably top 3 in the league that you had to pay and take care of, and you're still, of course, you want to make sure you keep that defense together, who has been really good. And you're probably going to have to pay those. You're going to have to pay a couple of those guys at some point between like Snead, McDuffie, and other players, and Bolton and William Gay, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, obviously, at some point, you're going to have to figure out how to replace those players as well. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen in 2 out of the 3 losses this year with the Chiefs is that you have to, even though you have a great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who, again, played lights out, and obviously this is a situation where you could argue that he's still the MVP front runner after this game, because there was no fault of his own where, outside of the underthrown pass to Justin Watson that ended up being an interception in the end zone. Outside of that, there wasn't anything, I don't think, in his power that he could have done to have changed the outcome of the game, especially when your receivers are dropping all those passes. So, yeah, biggest thing for the Chiefs, just try to find a way to get a receiver in the offseason. But for now, just obviously got to work with what you have. I'm sure Andy Reid will continue to look for different ways to. I'm sure Andy Reid will look for different ways to get guys involved and get guys going. Obviously, going to have to find a way to get Travis probably try to get Travis some easy looks early in the next game, just so he's not in his head as much, because he did, he had the fumble, he had the fumble loss, and he had a couple of other plays that weren't characteristic of what he usually plays like. So, yeah, but I'm not extremely worried about the Chiefs. I'm sure they'll figure things out. It's just a situation where the personnel definitely let down. The receiving personnel let down Patrick Mahomes in this game. So to our next game, the Cardinals and the Texans. So for this game, the Texans. Well, first of all, C.J.Stroud finally proved that he is human. He is a human guy. He had a tough game, obviously, in terms of throwing 3 interceptions, but his defense did a good job of picking him up, and it wasn't a situation where he was just outright atrocious and just didn't do anything. He obviously was able to connect with his receivers, including Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and also the Texans were able to run the football pretty well. So it all was not lost for CJ on that day. But this was just a good situation of the Texans rallying around their quarterback and showing that they can still win even when their quarterback has a subpar day, which I believe is a huge confidence builder, not only for the team in general, but for CJ as well, because he understands that he doesn't have to. I think he doesn't feel psychologically like he needs to put the team on his back every single time he goes out there. Now, of course, he can do it if necessary, but I think understanding that his defense does have the potential to have games like this is a huge confidence boost for him and for the entire team. For the Cardinals, this was another tough game to lose, obviously. Kyler had his moments, and the team did what they could, but I think this was just a situation where where you have a guy like Demarco Ryans who's one of the better defensive minds in the game, and it's just a situation where they were unable to make things happen at certain points in the game. But I don't think this is a situation where the Cardinals are too far away from winning these games that they've lost, as we said in previous weeks. I think that Kyler will continue to get better as the season goes on. I believe they'll win a few more games, especially the one against Chicago in a couple of weeks. And then, so I don't think there's too much of an issue here. And yeah, the biggest surprise was obviously was of course Hollywood Brown not having a crazy game. So I'm sure they'll probably find a way they'll try to find ways to get him involved. Kind of like I said with Travis Kelce, try to get him involved early in the game, whether it's bubble screens, jet sweeps, just something to get the ball in his hands early and often for the next game. But again, wouldn't worry too much if I'm the Cardinals. Obviously want to improve on some things, but I think this was just more of an inspired game from the Texans in terms of just their defense stepping up and making plays, and then everybody rallying around CJ to keep him from to keep the Texans from having a bad loss. So another game that was almost a candidate for upset of the week was the Bears and the Lions. On the Lions side, obviously they were able to run the ball very effectively, which definitely helped Jared Goff because early in the game, I believe he threw like 2 quick interceptions in like the first 2 or 3 drives. It was a little bizarre. Was surprising, but Detroit being able to run the football definitely helped him settle down a little bit. Now, of course, he threw 3 interceptions just like C.J.Stroud did this week, but fortunately, he was able to come through when it mattered most. He had a late touchdown to Jameson Williams, and then obviously took the team down in the 2-minute drill, and David Montgomery was able to score and put the game away. So, very impressive effort from Detroit coming back and never say die. If you're the Bears, this is a game that definitely got away. You were able to run the ball very effectively. Justin Fields kept the ball out of harm's way. So, and you were able to dominate in two categories that usually predict success. They usually predict success when you do these things. Because they were +3 in turnover differential, and they dominated in time of possession. So usually when you win both of those categories, you're usually able to come out on top. But down the stretch after they made it 26-14, it's one of those things where they were playing not to lose, and obviously one of those things when you're not a good team is trying to learn how to win, and sometimes understanding that obviously in order to win you have to remain aggressive. And that doesn't mean throwing the ball every play or doing anything like that, but just not becoming ultra conservative and then just hoping that your defense wins in the end. Because after the Lions scored on that Jameson Williams touchdown, I think that drive only took it like a minute and a half or something like that. The Bears came out, ran the ball a couple times, and then on third down, it was pretty predictable. And then at that point, obviously the Lions had all confidence in their offense to go down and score, and they were able to win the game. So, again, tough loss for the Bears, but it's one of those things where you can understand it because it's a young team, and obviously, as we said, they're trying to learn how to win. So, I don't think it's a situation that's going to change this. I don't think it's a situation that's going to change this quickly. But I believe that the Bears can walk away from this game saying, okay, we did some things well, and we were able to dominate time of possession, as I said before. So just finding that balance of, dominating throughout the game, finishing drives, and doing things of that nature, while also not getting ultra conservative and giving the other team life. So that is something that I think that they'll continue to work on going forward. Will that translate to more wins? I'm not sure, but obviously, if you're able to have an impressive performance like this up until obviously the last few minutes, there's something to build off there, and we'll see what they'll do going forward. So for our defensive struggle of the week, we have the Steelers and the Browns. So for the Steelers, basically it was the Jalen Warren show because outside of his 74-yard touchdown, they really did not do too much offensively. This was one of those where I think they probably felt like it was better to just kind of do a field position battle. The passing game obviously wasn't too prolific. Deontay Johnson had 8 targets and only 2 catches. George Pickens had 6 targets but only had 4 catches as well. So obviously, when you're playing against a team like the Browns, it's tough sledding. But I think it's just a situation where I think they just have to find a way to be more creative offensively, as Dan Orlovsky would say, and obviously, I think they just have to figure out. I think they just had to figure out ways to be more creative in the pass attack, kind of like the Patriots with Mac Jones. I think you just have to find a way to create more creative concepts and not be as predictable in order to give your offense a chance to be successful. So, not too much you can glean from that side offensively. You hope that, obviously, if you're a Steelers fan, you hope that your guys hope that you guys connect on more plays. But again, you just hope that they're more creative. But again, I'm sure the Fireman Canada chants are getting louder and louder by the week. So something needs to change and fast. I understand that they put him on the sideline the last couple of weeks, so that way he would be able to communicate with all the players on the sideline, which is something that I don't think you're able to do as effectively when you're in the box. And so I think that's part of that. But yeah, I just think it's a situation where the Steelers played closer to what we thought the Browns were going to do than what the Browns actually did. And for the Browns, Dorian Thompson-Robinson had a better game than obviously his debut. He did throw an interception, but for the most part kept the ball out of harm's way. The Browns weren't the most successful running the football. I think that might be partially because Pittsburgh was probably like, we're going to force Dorian to throw the ball, as evident by his 43 pass attempts. But again, the defense did what they could. Myles Garrett had himself a great game. And the team made plays when they needed to. And this is one of those games where you hope that you can build, where you hope that DTR is able to build off for sure, as he will obviously remain a starter, even though they signed Joe Flacco to the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's obvious. We obviously know the formula is going to be run the ball, take care of the football, trust your defense, and ask DTR to maybe make a play or two here and there, but not do too much more. So the formula worked this week, and obviously if you're able to hold teams to 10 points, I think obviously the formula will be pretty easy to follow. Now obviously, if you end up playing the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, when their offense is humming, and the Ravens, obviously you're probably gonna put up some more points, but and the Miami Dolphins as well. You're gonna have to put up some points, but for now, it's just one of those things where with the schedule they have, they'll probably just. I think this will just be the formula, and the hope is obviously you find a way to get one of those wild card spots and sneak into the playoffs. But this was just a defensive struggle all around. Great job by both teams on the defensive side. Good performances from obviously the star players, and just classic AFC North football. I'm not sure what else you can say besides that. So now to the Chargers and the Packers. So first, we start with the Packers. This was a great bounce back game, especially for Jordan Love, who kind of had a game similar to like the Saints one that he had, because even though obviously his final stat line was great, It was more what he did in the second half because he went 12 for 17 for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was the difference on his side. And obviously, again, it was a good win for the Packers considering last week. Obviously, they were in sort of a similar position in having the chance to win the game, but being unable to capitalize in the red zone, especially late in the game when Jordan Love threw the interception through the interception. I believe he was targeting Christian Watson on the play. But yeah, so it was good to see. It was good to see the Packers improve. Jordan Love continues to make some strides. I don't know with the way Packer fans are conversing. I don't know if he is gonna be the guy going forward, but I feel like if you still have performances like this and you're able to win a few more games, it's definitely a conversation about obviously giving him more time to grow. Now I know that's a little harsh because he's obviously this is like obviously his first full year starting, and if it was up to me, I would obviously give him more time because the flashes are there as you can see. Now of course this is against the Chargers defense, so obviously there's a little bit there where people are probably saying you got to slow down, but I mean it's there. The talent's there. We've seen him make plays, and obviously he's a young guy, so he'll make some mistakes, but he looks like a guy you can win with, in my opinion. On the Chargers side, Justin Herbert, again, kind of like I said with Patrick Mahomes, it's a situation where the box score doesn't tell the whole story. And honestly, not to oversimplify this, but I believe the game, honestly, just for the Chargers, it comes down to 2 plays. And that was the drop by Keenan Allen at the goal line when the game was tied to 10. And obviously the drop by Quentin Johnson around the 35-yard line when they were down by 3 and had a chance to tie the game. Obviously, if either of those plays happen, it's a potential momentum shift, and especially the Keenan Allen one, because if you go up 7 there, I don't think the Packers aren't. I don't think the Packers' offense would have been rattled, but it definitely would have been. It would have been a little tougher, obviously, because down 3 and down 7 is a little bit different psychologically. Even though, of course, there was plenty of time still left in the game, but I think those two key drops were something serious. Obviously, if you're a Chargers fan, you don't take solace in this loss at all, obviously. And with what Brandon Staley said at the podium today, talking about obviously keeping the defensive plays, but getting a little snappy with the media, you have to wonder if they'll let him. I'm assuming they'll let him finish out the season at this rate, unless they just like completely get embarrassed in like the next few games. But you have to wonder. You obviously know that he's feeling the heat, but you have to wonder how long of a leash they have at this point. Because if he makes it past this season, I think everybody would be ultimately surprised. But yeah, for the Chargers, it's just another tough loss. Obviously, one of those that I believe going into it, obviously you would have felt like you had a very good chance of winning. Yeah, just a tough game, and just got to move on to next week and try to find a way to win against one of the premier teams in the conference and the Baltimore Ravens. So a divisional matchup, we had the Seahawks and the Rams. For the Rams, this is an impressive win, considering the factors behind it. Defense definitely carried the day. Obviously, Matthew Stafford and the offense had their moments, but I would say defense carried the day because they were able to hold Seattle to field goals on a majority of their drives. Even with what the Seahawks were able to do, because at one point they had like 3 drives that took up like 18, 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and all of those led to scores. But they were able to keep it at 16-7 for a minute, and then obviously the turning point of the game was kind of when Aaron Donald was hit Geno Smith, and he had to go out of the game for basically the majority, even though he did come back in the 2 minute, for the 2 minute drill at the end. So the Rams win another game and have a surprising sweep of the Seahawks, which I'm not sure too many people saw coming going into the season and obviously going into this game. So congrats to them on the win for that for sure. On the Seahawks side, obviously it's hard to win a game when your offense only has 12 total yards in the second half. Like we said before, Geno got hurt, and it seemed like at that point they just were unable to really move the football. But again, as we've been saying these last few weeks, when you're unable to sustain drives and they end in field goals, it gets a little tough. And obviously, when you're playing an underdog like the Rams, even though the Rams were at home, when you play an underdog and you let them hang around, you give them a sense of belief and a feeling that they can stay in it. And I think once it got to 16-14, Seattle started to really feel the pressure, and obviously the Rams were like, okay, we have a chance. We might be able to win this thing. And even with all that, obviously Geno comes back in the 2-minute drill. They go down, and they have a chance to kick the field goal. Now, even if the field goal was made, I think that everybody would have – the questions wouldn't have been as loud probably because of the wind would have excused it. But I think everybody would have questioned why Seattle decided to run the football right after the D.K.Metcalf catch around like the 40-yard line instead of spiking the football and trying to get another 8 to 10 yards. Obviously, they had no timeouts at the time, so that's what made it even more puzzling. I guess the thought there was they felt that they could either catch the Rams off guard and get a good 5 to 7 yards there, or they just felt like spiking the ball there just felt like a wasted down, and they just felt like that it probably would have been easier just to run the ball just to make sure that they could spike it and have a chance at the field goal. Now, Jason Myers did hit a 54-yarder earlier in the game, so I can understand the thought process to a degree in terms of going, well, he's made one before. But obviously, in that situation, you want to try to get it as close as possible because 6 to 8 yards could be the difference between a make or a miss depending on the trajectory of the kick. So, and that's why sometimes we see, even like on extra points, sometimes the football barely going through the uprights as it, and almost looking like a miss, but it's just because of the distance they were able to, you were able to make it instead of it going wide left or wide right. So this is a tough loss for Seattle, obviously, and now you're a game behind the 49ers, who did win their game against the Bucs this week in dominant fashion. So obviously you're going into the 49er game a little demoralized, but I do think being able to play Thursday against the 49ers helps because you have to turn the page very quickly, so you obviously can't dwell on that loss. It's a very tough loss. Like I said in the preview, it felt like the ultimate trap game, obviously, because you had the 49ers coming up on Thursday, and obviously you have the chance for the division lead. But again, it's one of those you gotta turn the page a little bit and just again try to figure out ways to sustain drives, to end drives with touchdowns, obviously. Now, I believe Kenneth Walker has sustained like a serious oblique injury, if I'm not mistaken, so we will probably see more Zach Charbonnet down the stretch. I'm not sure how much that affects their run game. To a degree, obviously, the biggest thing will probably be like red zone in terms of the red zone, but yeah, I don't know if there's too much of a difference between Charbonnet and Walker when it comes to like the effectiveness running the football. So I don't think Charbonnet getting more carries is just going to be like the thing that unlocks the offense. I could be wrong, but I don't know if that's the thing that unlocks the offense. So because of that, I'm not like I'm not 1,000% sure that's the answer to the mystery of why Seattle has been forced to kick all these field goals. But we will see. Obviously, we'll see them Thursday against the 49ers. So we'll see what potential improvements they try to make, and hope obviously that it'll be a pretty good game. So another divisional game, we have the Titans and the Jaguars. So for the Jags, they were able to run the ball effectively. I was incorrect about. Well, I won't say incorrect, but this was not a game. This was while Travis Etienne still got his touches. That wasn't the thing that unlocked the offense in this game. What unlocked the offense was Trevor Lawrence just going bonkers and just making play after play. It was good to see him and Calvin really finally, connect again. Reestablish that connection. And I think if they're able to replicate this performance, especially on the offensive line where Trevor was able to have time in the pocket, so he it gave time to develop plays and they were able to go down the field effectively. I think that Jacksonville will be fine. I think that their offense will be fine as well. So yeah, just from a Jacksonville standpoint, it was good to see Trevor have a great week. Considering how maligned he's been I'll say the last few days. I won't say the last couple of weeks because we haven't heard anything too crazy about Trevor, but people were starting to the way things were trending. It seemed like people were starting to act like he was not going to be. He wasn't going to be able to live up to the hype that came out, and when he came out in 2021. And it seemed like people were going to start to link him with the other quarterbacks in terms of not living up to his draft expectations. So it was good to see him. Good to see him have a good week. To have an excellent week. To have a stellar week. On the Titans side, as we said in the preview, it's possible that they were obviously going to give the Jaguars a turnover or two. Also, of course, you got a rookie quarterback in Will Levis that is still learning. So obviously that's a tough thing as well. Just a thing where obviously again Trevor was just on offensively, and when a quarterback is on like that, sometimes there's just nothing you can do defensively. And at that point, you're just trying to match him from an offensive standpoint. But unfortunately, the Titans weren't really able to get into gear at all. They did have a nice quarterback reverse play, basically, where they had Derrick Henry and the Wildcat. They had Will Levis come on in reverse, and then he threw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins down the field. So there was a couple of things to take away from this game, but again, this is just a situation where the offense has kind of come back to earth since the Atlanta game, and now I think they're just trying to figure out ways to still be effective. Obviously, again, we understand that they can stretch the field now with Will Levis, as we saw on the touchdown pass to DeAndre Hopkins this week. And I think that they'll figure it out as the season goes along. Again, kind of like I said before, like I said with the Bears, I don't know if that's going to lead to wins, so to speak. And this may be a situation where obviously you need to look for offensive line improvements when you get into the offseason. But I think at this point it's just trying to figure out ways to get Levis shots down the field, and probably finding a way to get the running game going a little bit more, because Derrick Henry only having 38 rushing yards is not something that you would expect, not something that you would have expected come into the season, even with Will Levis at quarterback, or even if it was Malik Willis or any other. Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill, whoever it was a quarterback. Obviously, we've been used to Derrick Henry running through 8-man boxes before, so it's not. I don't think so. him having only 38 yards is pretty surprising. But it'll be interesting to see what the Titans do down the stretch, obviously. And for our final game of this recap, we have the Sunday night game, the Vikings and the Broncos. So for the Broncos, this almost felt like a vintage Seattle game with Russell Wilson, where it was just obviously you hang around, you rely on your defense, you ask them to get you some to make some plays and get some turnovers. You ask Russ to just keep the ball out of harm's way, and then you ask him to make those one or two plays to put you over the top and get you the win, which he was able to do when he made that touchdown pass to Courtland Sutton, who made a heck of a grab, just like he did the week prior. So good win for the Broncos, continuing on that streak. Russell Wilson and Sean Payton have seemed to have found something, which probably leaves Bronco fans very optimistic going into the rest of the season and then obviously the off season, and makes Russ's contract a little bit more palatable to people as the Broncos quarterback going forward. So you love to see that. Love to see that for Denver fans. And I don't know, man. Definitely have a chance to sneak into the wild card spot. You were able to beat the Bills last week. You beat the Chiefs, so you have two impressive wins on your resume. But being able to beat the Bills, so you have the tiebreaker over them. I don't know if they played the Jets. If they played the Jets, okay. So you don't have the tiebreaker over the Jets, but you did beat the Bills. You got the Browns this week, and then you got the Texans and the Chargers over the next couple weeks. So you have a chance to rack up some wins and give yourself a very good chance of making the wild card spot. So definitely a brighter outlook for Denver going into the next few weeks, and as we said in the offseason as well. So big props to Denver for getting this W. For the Vikings, obviously tough game to lose, but when you have a -3 turnover differential, it's kind of hard to win those games. Joshua Dobbs had a tough game this week. Obviously had a couple of turnovers, but again, as we said last week, he continues to show why he continues to unlock this offense in a way that Kirk is unable to, just from a mobility standpoint, as we saw on yet another touchdown run this week. So that was impressive. Alexander Mattison and Todd Chandler were running through the Broncos defense like Swiss cheese, but it wasn't a situation where the Broncos were just getting blown off the line. Both running backs were just making guys miss at an unbelievable rate, and it just was impressive to see the whole night. Obviously, T.J. Hawkinson got his. Addison was a little quieter than I expected, but obviously when you have Patrick Surtain guarding you, who is arguably the best corner in the game, depending on, honestly, I believe it's a 3-man race right now between him, Sauce, and Jalen Ramsey, but again, obviously he's arguably the best corner in the game, depending on how you feel. So you can understand why Addison had a little bit of a quieter night. So it's just for Minnesota, obviously, again, turnover differential hurts you, and situation where obviously you got to make sure that, especially if you're Josh Dobbs, you just have to make sure you keep the ball out of harm's way, because he has had a few games this year where he's fumbled multiple times. Now he hasn't lost fumbles multiple times in multiple games, but he has had a fumbling problem this year, and obviously there's a situation where you got to make sure you go into the football. But for the most part, not too worried about Minnesota. This did end their 5-game win streak, but it's just one of them. Just a tough game. Obviously, the Broncos are continuing to look better defensively ever since Randy Gregory and Frank Clark were handed their walking papers. But tough loss. you do get the Bears on Monday night, so so that may be a get right game for you. Now, of course, that's definitely trap game material, but just a situation where you just want to make sure you're good to go, and you find a way to win that game. So, yeah, yeah. Outside of that, I don't think there's too much more to say about the Vikings on that. Just try to find a way to get it, to get right against the Bears, and just try to start a new streak. So that was the Week 11 recap for the NFL. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in and watching. I hope I was a little bit more energetic this week than I have been in past ones. Also, appreciate you if you stayed throughout the whole video. If there was a team or a game that I didn't talk about that you would have liked for me to talk about, just leave a comment or reach out to us on any of the social media platforms, and we can have a discussion about that. Again, look forward to the Week 12 preview. It'll be a two-parter, obviously. Most likely the first part will be obviously the Thanksgiving games, and then the Black Friday game between the Dolphins and the Jets. And then obviously part 2 will be all of the games. Not all of the games, but a few of the other games that I believe are key games going into the week. And we may have some of the What's the Play guys on for either part of the preview. I'm not sure yet. We'll hash that out behind the scenes, and we'll let you guys know. But again, thank you for watching. Appreciate all you guys. Just ask, like, comment, share, subscribe again. And this has been another episode of Brian's Deductions. Stay tuned for the next play.